in our in2 session. Just by way of reminder or refresher, City Century, which is a career creation collaboration, who've worked with over 50 firms who have offices in London, now working with over 40. We look to recruit talented year 12s and 13s from wherever they might be to start within our law firms, primarily in London, but also in other cities like Birmingham, Leeds, Manchester, etc., Bristol. And our Eye into City session is in response to government analysis that shows that it is difficult, in particular for year 10s and year 11s, to access work experience both in person and virtual in employers or potential employers of choice. So our response to that has been to create a 10-module series called Eye into City. And the idea of that is that that will give you a similar exposure to what you might have had if you'd had at least, say, a couple of days in a city law firm. We are particularly aware that actual work experience can often rely on someone being local to the employer of choice. And of course, there aren't that many people that live in the City of London. In fact, there are only 6,500 that live in the City of London. There aren't that many that live in walking or short travel distance of that. So we've created a virtual response, and that's so that we can get to talent wherever it might be across England, Wales, Scotland, etc. And we've tried to make this as interactive and collaborative and informative and interesting as possible. You're not allowed to have favourites in terms of law firms, but if I was allowed, Freshfields would be one of them. You're also not allowed to have favourites in terms of early career specialists, but if I did and I was allowed, Natasha might be one of them. And you're definitely not allowed to have favourites in terms of solicitor apprentices. But if I could and if I did, it would probably be Ubay. I'm not going to lie. So you are in for a really special event. Just by way of reminder about this session, we've had 10 law firms, and we have covered what is London with A&O Sherman, what is the City of London with CMS. We have done what business does the city do with Simmons and Simmons, what is city law by Watson, Farley and Williams, what are city firms like with RPC. Hogan Lovells took us through what work do lawyers do, and Broadfield really told us about who works in a law firm, because shock horror, there are people that aren't lawyers in law firms. Burgess Salmon, and in particular George, I think, Harry, sorry, there, told us about routes into corporate law, solicitor apprenticeships, traditional training contracts, etc. And Slaughter and May, in our last session on Monday with Hannah, told us all about what business law needs in terms of skills and how you might be able to build them from year 10 and evidence them. Today's session is really about the nitty-gritty of learning law, trying law, and becoming a city professional. We will finish this session around about 6, maybe a little bit afterwards. I am really pleased that so many of you have made it. We've got 31 who are here at today's session. Can I please ask, can you go to the react button at the bottom? You see there's a heart, and can you give me a thumbs up if you have attended all 10 sessions? Let's see if we've got some thumbs coming up. Look at that. Now, the skill that demonstrates to me, there are 2 or 3 skills, is curiosity and tenacity. Both of those are really, really important skills for solicitor apprentices. So please, when you get your certificate of attendance, and Finley will be talking about that a little bit later, please do post that on LinkedIn. Make sure that goes on your CV. Make sure you work that into any conversation you have with any potential employer, whoever that might be, because that is really, really special, and you should feel that you've done a really good part of the work you need to do in order to apply successfully to secure the career that you deserve. So that's all from me from now. I am really, really pleased and proud of this, I have to say. This is one of the best things that's happened to me in the last year, if not in the last 10 years. So thank you very much for all that. You've made an old man very happy. I'm going to hand over to Finley now.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Good evening, everyone, and really, really impressed to see all those thumbs up. Thank you for your commitment to the series. We've had some incredible sessions. I'm sure you've all taken an awful lot away from the series. As Patrick has mentioned, you will be entitled to your certificate of attendance if you've achieved 8, 9, or 10 of the series. Expect to get those out to you in the coming weeks, so do keep an eye on your emails for that. Obviously, I've already got your emails, so I'll be sending those out in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully. Another thing that I want to mention is a lot of you have been email asking about recordings. Now we haven't sort of made this available throughout the series, and the idea is that now the series is going to have concluded after today's session, we will be getting those on our YouTube. As we've done with previous series before, I'm also going to edit up a highlights reel and I'll get that out on our LinkedIn. A few of you have been connecting with not only myself, but the entire City Century team on LinkedIn. So make sure you continue to do that. Stay in touch with us, follow the page, look out for future opportunities that will be coming up, and look out for those recordings as well. So you can go back to the information that you have received throughout the series so far and rely on that for the next steps of your application processes, of your career decisions, whatever it might be. The final thing I'll mention before I hand over to the Freshfields team is that I mentioned to you on Monday's session with Slaughter and May about our next webinar episode, which will be the SCC series finale. I put a link to that in the chat for the sign up form. I'm also going to make it one easier for you, and I will just have exactly the same link that you've been using for in2. So if you want to join that session, it will be next Tuesday on the 14th of July at 5 until 6 p.m. If you're interested in that, we're going to basically summarize everything we've done throughout the SCC series. We're going to break down the application process. How can you get yourself into a solicitor apprenticeship? What are the top tricks? How are you going to go on to have some success in these interview processes, in these written application processes, on these online assessments? So just use exactly the same link next Tuesday at 5 p.m. if you are interested in joining that session. Otherwise, thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and I'll pass over to Ube and Natasha. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Finn and Patrick, for the lovely warm welcome. Let me get my slides up and then we'll get started. Great, hopefully you can see that on your side. So quick intro for myself. So I'm Tash. I am part of the early careers team at Freshfields. I have been a part of the early careers recruitment team as well as the development side of the team as well. I'm currently the early careers apprenticeship specialist for the year, covering maternity leave. And I'll be sort of running this session alongside Ube, who's our apprentice here at Freshfields as well. I'll let him introduce himself now.
Thanks, Tash. So, hi everyone. By way of introduction, my name's Ube and I'm a first year solicitor apprentice here at Freshfields. So I'm currently sitting within the firm's competition team, and competition is essentially all about making sure that businesses are competing in a fair manner. So making sure that we are constantly getting better products at better prices. So I'm really looking forward to working with you over the next hour or so. And before we start, I just wanted to echo what Finley and Patrick said and just give you all a word of credit, because honestly speaking, I didn't know anything about the city or even the fact that apprenticeships like mine existed when I was in your shoes. So the fact that you're all here and you're giving up an hour of your time to absorb all of this information, it is really impressive. And I have no doubt that it's going to stand you all in really good stead for whatever you do next. So handing over back to Tash.
Amazing, thank you. So a bit about Freshfields. We're an internal law firm. We work with organisations all over the world on complex, high-profile matters. So that might include major business deals, supporting companies as they expand globally, or advising on new areas as well. But today isn't about the technical side of law. Today is about you. So it's about helping you understand how people just like you start their career in law, and how to begin building the right skills and mindset, and how to sort of take those next steps to sort of lead you to a future career in the city. I'll sort of move on to the next slide. So before we get into the session, it's useful to take a moment to explain what today is really about. This session is not intended to be a lecture at all. It's not us testing you on what you know. Instead, it's about giving you clarity and confidence. So by the end of the session, there are 4 things we want you to walk away with. Firstly, confidence in your potential. You don't need to have everything figured out today. It's completely normal to sort of not feel confident at the moment, but do feel confident in your potential. Know that you do have a space here to sort of explore and pursue a career in law overall. So do have confidence in that. Second, we want you to understand how to start exploring law now. So not in a complicated way, we'll break it down, make it simple, so you can take realistic steps that can help you sort of aid towards getting towards a career in sort of law in general, if that's commercial or wider as well. Third, we'll focus on the skills that really matter in business law. So often people think that it's about academics, and that is a part of it, but actually it's things like communication, teamwork, and curiosity that are just as important and will allow you to thrive in a corporate environment. And finally, we want you to leave with one clear sort of action, something practical, something achievable, something that will help you move forward and allow you to feel confident. Something sort of specifically about Freshfields is we're not looking for the perfect package, we're looking for potential. So you don't need to know everything, have loads of legal knowledge or perfect plan. What matters is sort of your attitude, your curiosity, and your willingness to sort of learn and keep trying. So moving on, what does learning law really mean? So one of the biggest misconceptions about law is that it's all about memorizing rules or learning lots of complicated information. But actually, that's not where it starts. At your stage, learning law is really about how to think. So it's about developing curiosity. I think that's definitely a big one. Ask questions is something that I always ask, well, sort of tell people. Asking questions is a good thing. No question is a dumb question. Make sure that you are being curious. Think about why did this happen? What could go wrong? What would be the sort of fairest solution? Those sorts of things you want to be asking yourself. Just why? Also, critical thinking, which is super important. So being able to look at a situation from more than one perspective and understanding that there isn't always one simple answer. So think about sort of pros and cons, weighing out sort of what situation may work better in terms of a client or a deal or any situation really. You're just trying to make sure that you're expanding the way that you think and taking other perspectives into sort of consideration. Another key part of judgment, so it is like a very important skill in terms of commercial law, especially. We're sort of helping out clients a lot. So it's not just about sort of what you know legally, but making sure they have good judgment. So making sure that you're thinking about things practically and that you're making sort of things make sense in terms of the client as well. So what makes sense in the real world, what's practical, what's something that they can actually do. So making sure that you have good judgment is really important. Awareness is a big one as well. So making sure that you're sort of being aware that law and the legal industry is a part of loads of different aspects of life. So business, technology, politics, as well as society. And at Freshfields, lawyers do thrive in terms of these key skills. So when you're thinking about sort of law or sort of a position in the legal industry, do think of these key skills. I think all lawyers at Freshfields do sort of show these skills and demonstrate it day to day. Fantastic. So next slide. So law in the real world. So far, we've talked about how lawyers think, but what does that actually look like in the real world? At Freshfields, we work with organisations all over the world on some of the most complex and high-profile matters. So that might include helping two global companies merge, advising clients on new technologies like AI, for example. That's definitely something that's continuing to come up a lot within the industry, supporting organisations through major disputes as well, or helping businesses understand and follow complex regulations. But what's important to understand is that it isn't just something that is sort of separate and unique to a law firm. These are things that do leak into everyday life and into the real world. Law is everywhere. For example, think about apps that you use day to day. For example, I don't know, TikTok or sort of Instagram. There are rules around sort of data in terms of how it's collected and how it's protected. You can give it some thought about sort of brands as well. So I don't know, Adidas, Nike. Those sort of big brands have contracts behind sort of selling products and protecting products, how they're made, how they're sold. Even with the news, in terms of stories about big companies, governments, technology, legal sort of systems are embedded into those. And at Freshfields, our role is to help clients navigate those challenges and make decisions in complex situations. So when we talk about a career in law, we're not just talking about something that's distant and abstract. We're talking about a career that sits right at the center of how the world works, where business, people, and big decisions come together. Great. So I want to ask sort of questions to those on the chat. So please do feel free to use the Q&A function. For students, sort of like day to day, which of these do you already do in terms of the 10 sort of blocks on the screen? Are there any that you use? For example, following the news, does anyone ask questions? Do you find that you speak up in classroom discussions? Okay, someone said number 9. You talk to teachers, career advisors, apprentices about law. Number 3, curious, you ask questions, the why and what ifs. 10, try something new even if it feels challenging. Okay, I've got a good few. 10 and 7. So yeah, build your confidence, communicating ideas. 2, speak up in classrooms. 8, take responsibility for tasks and deadlines. So yeah, these are all great sort of examples of things that do interlink. So if you take one thing from today is that there's lots of simple things that you can do and start exploring law right away. So you don't need to have work experience or legal knowledge to begin. These 10 ideas are all of sort of things that you do day to day that do interlink and intersect. For example, following the news and asking questions helps you think like a lawyer. Speaking up in class, sharing ideas, building confidence, that's something that's incredibly important in law. I definitely think that it can be difficult, but that's a skill that you can build. Even things like working in a team, meeting deadlines, or solving problems are all skills lawyers use every day. At Freshfields, we look for people who are curious, motivated, and willing to get involved. So don't feel that you need to wait until you're older. You're already building those skills now, and that's what matters. So when you are applying to firms, if you are doing sort of interviews, do think of these skills that you're using and do demonstrate them. They are relevant, they're important, and that's exactly what we're looking for. Great, so moving on. So in terms of professional habits that you can start now, we sort of touched on sort of the skills, but these are some good sort of habits that are super important. So first off is reliability. This is about doing what you say you're going to do, whether that's completing work on time or contributing to a team task. It's something that's highly valued in any professional environment or setting. Making sure that you're demonstrating yourself as someone that is reliable, someone that is happy to pick up work and will see it through is super important and a skill that you can sort of demonstrate. Communication is another key habit. That's not just about speaking, but about expressing ideas clearly and respectfully and listening to others. So when you're communicating, that can be in person, that can be over the phone, that could be via email or Teams messages, just making sure that you're communicating in an effective way that gets your point across, but then also making sure that you're listening to others, make sure that you're digesting information as well as just giving that information as well. In terms of organization, it is also very essential. Making sure that you're able to manage your time, meet deadlines, and stay on top of your task is a skill that you'll use every day in law. So just making sure that you are having your sort of timetable handy, you're utilizing diaries, you're keeping track, making notes. I'm sure it's all sort of things that you do in terms of studying for like an exam. Just make sure that you're organized and planning out your day to work as effectively as possible. Accountability, so that is all about taking ownership of your work. That means being responsible for what you produce and being willing to learn when things don't go perfectly, which is completely normal. Everyone makes mistakes. It does happen everywhere. So just making sure that you're holding yourself to account and you're taking ownership of that is completely fine. Just making sure that you're flagging that and that you're trying to problem solve and making sure that you're sort of looking for a solution and, you know, being forthcoming in terms of speaking to your team or your supervisor. And finally, and last but not least, resilience. Nobody gets everything right on the first time. Being able to sort of learn from your mistakes, being able to adapt and keep improving is what builds long-term success. Resilience is super important and will allow you to thrive in a career in law. Just making sure that you are picking yourself up and you're carrying on, just being consistent is super important and will allow you to be successful. So at Freshfields, these are habits that we see in people who thrive, people in business services, and our lawyers as well. And the key message is that you don't need to wait until you start a career to develop these. So these are habits that you can take away with you today, things that you can keep an eye on, things that you can sort of think of in your day to day. Am I demonstrating these skills? How am I demonstrating these skills as well? So you're already building these habits in school, in your activities, day-to-day life, but do continue to sort of think about these habits and build them up as you go along. Great, so opportunities across the city. So these are some opportunities that I would definitely keep in mind. We talked a lot about skills and habits and how you can start building, but the next step is understanding what opportunities are actually available to you. So firms like Freshfields offer a wide range of ways for students to explore, even before they start actually applying to roles. So one of the most accessible ways is through our virtual insight programs. These give you the chance to learn more about what lawyers do, hear from the people in the firm, and start building an understanding of sort of the profession in general. So this will allow you to sort of just get a better understanding of what that will look like. There are also work experience opportunities, which give you a sort of more direct insight into what it looks like to be in a sort of law firm environment. So this can be sort of virtual, or these can be in person. Either way, they are fantastic and definitely something that will allow you to build those skills and something great to be putting on your CV or applications. Sort of virtual work experience can be sort of simulations as well, which links into the first point in terms of bettering your understanding of what lawyers do and what it looks like to work in a sort of commercial setting or corporate setting. Then there's also sort of like work experience more widely, but in terms of sort of webinars like this one, or sort of like early careers events, these are so important. Virtual series, these are great chances for you to sort of focus on different skills development, application guidance, giving you the opportunity to ask questions as well and engage with the speakers at different firms across the UK. So it is a great chance for you to really branch out, to take something away with you, and also something to put on your CV as well. I think you can take a lot away from webinars and sort of events more generally. So it's definitely great to sort of continue to do. There are lots of online resources as well that are available. So this can be videos, think like videos on YouTube, LinkedIn, podcasts, careers, content. You can access this in your own time. And it's definitely a good resource for you to sort of better understand about sort of law, skills, development. Sort of LinkedIn networking is good as well. So making sure that you are making a LinkedIn account, make sure that you're utilizing it. People are quite active on LinkedIn and are happy to sort of offer you any advice and any help. So don't be shy, do reach out on LinkedIn. Make sure that you are sort of connecting with people in different industries, sort of different ranges as well. So if you do see an apprentice on LinkedIn, do reach out. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to sort of help out and answer any questions that you may have. And then mailing lists and social channels. So yeah, do sign up for mailing lists, subscribe to newsletters, for example, Little Law. This will help you sort of further understand sort of what law looks like in different sort of aspects, and keep you sort of commercially aware as well. So these are just a few things that you can sort of think about and that can sort of help you sort of have these better wide opportunities. These are things that you can do actively now that can be really useful and allow you to sort of have a better understanding.
And just to jump in there, what I would say is I would definitely really recommend online legal work experience on platforms like the Forage. So that's where you can actually do exercises that you would usually do in person. So for example, you're given a scenario on a specific client and you're asked to advise them. You can then write a client email, you can write some correspondence, and you're then going to see a model or exemplar answer. And then you can then compare that to yours and see, okay, where can I improve? What can I do better next time? That being said, and whilst I do think it's really important that you try and get some insight into the legal world and so try and do tasks like that, I wouldn't also underestimate the importance of other experiences like volunteering work. So for example, in my case, I didn't really have any legal work experience, but I'm still here and I'm still at Freshfields because a lot of what I mentioned in my applications were my volunteering work at my local food bank, my volunteering at a centre for patients with brain damage, because it's all about transferable skills and it's all about soft skills. And so don't try and shy away from other aspects of your personality. Always embrace that, and I'll always encourage you to try and do those other activities because one, it makes you a bit unique, and two, it gives you a unique selling point throughout the application process. So always try and engage and maximize those experiences, which allows you to develop on these transferable skills.
Absolutely, totally agree. I think that that can be underestimated a lot. It is all about transferable skills. Retail, a lot of people underestimate that. You're doing a lot of communicating with sort of the public, your team. Do sort of think about any sort of other experience that you've had, volunteering, sports clubs. Any of those things are super relevant and will look good on your CV. And then when you are thinking about that experience, think about the sort of skills that is brought out. So for example, teamwork, communication, resilience, those are all sort of transferable and do link to sort of a career in law. So thank you so much for pointing that one out. So yeah, so looking at opportunities at Freshfields specifically, I'll sort of run through. Ibe already sort of touched on our virtual learning experiences. So we have one on Forage. It is fantastic. I would definitely ask you to check it out. We've just revamped it as well. So I do think it is super helpful, super useful, and I think you will get a lot out of it. And we're not obviously the only ones that do them. There's loads of law firms that do a range of different types. So do definitely spend some time and sort of work your way through. That would also look very good. In terms of events are great. If you can attend an event, at Freshfields, we host loads in person and virtual. You can sort of take a look on our Instagram and LinkedIn. We're also sort of quite active, I would say, on Facebook as well. So those are sort of areas where you can sort of check and connect with us, and you'll sort of see us posting when we have events, virtual or in person. So feel free to take a look. On our website as well, we'll also have sort of events posted. So those are sort of a good way for you to connect, network, get to know some people. Obviously, our sister apprenticeship program is a fantastic program, if I do say so myself. We'll be opening up applications sort of this autumn, so please do take a look. We sort of have 6 spaces. It's a fantastic opportunity, and I do think you should put yourself out there, and please do apply if you are interested. Beyond that, looking at, so if you choose to go the university route, we have our First Year Insight Scheme, which is a 2-day program. It's designed for you to feel like you are sort of getting that commercial law and life at Freshfields sort of experience and feel. So all attendees are in person, and it also gives you the opportunity to be fast-tracked to the sort of second stage of our assessment for the summer vacation scheme as well. So it's a great opportunity for you to come in, do some networking, but also get fast tracks potentially onto the second stage of our summer vacation scheme. Next is our summer vacation scheme, which is a 3-week placement. It's where you'll do sort of like real hands-on work experience with our practice groups. You also sort of get a lot of sort of skill sessions and workshops, insight talks, and social events as well. This is sort of open for the penultimate year students, and it is a good opportunity for you to receive a training associate program at the end of that as well. Then obviously we have our trainee associate program, which is a direct route into the firm, and that is sort of for penultimate and final year students that can apply. So this will sort of be the sort of general application, and then you'll sort of be fast tracked and do the SB process with us. So the First Year Insight Scheme, Summer Vacation Scheme, and Trainee Associate Program is for sort of university and up. But the virtual learning experience, thing that you can be doing now, events you can go to now as well, and there's this apprenticeship program thing that you can start to think of. It's a 6-year program. It is really good. It allows you to do sort of 1 day of studying and then the 4 days in the firm. For the first year 1 to year 4, you'll be rotating annually, and then 5 and 6 you'll be rotating with our trainees. So that is our opportunities at Freshfields more specifically. So in terms of application hints, whether you're applying for a legal role or something in business services, these tips apply to everyone. So this can be used for any sort of application. So think about what generally interests you, not just about law, but in how global law firm operate. Show curiosity by doing your research, attending events, and completing online work experience. So make sure that you are showing that you are curious and that you are interested. I think doing or having some good research, doing a bit of a deep dive can really show that you are interested, that you have a passion. So do look at our sort of more general UK early careers page, but do like sort of a deep dive into cases that you might have found interesting, sort of at Freshfields or in sort of the organisation that you're applying to. Make sure that you're diving in. You can look on their sort of LinkedIn, on their Instagram, and make sure that you're thinking about what interests you about the firm in particular, so you can demonstrate that in your application. When answering why Freshfields or sort of why the firm, try to avoid repeating facts from the first page. Like I mentioned, do that deep dive. Make sure that you're trying to be sort of maybe a little bit more unique in terms of what interests you specifically. So just making sure that it is coming across as sort of what genuinely resonates with you in particular. For example, if you're interested in M&A, you could reference a specific deal, something that you've seen on the news lately, or something that you're sort of following along with. That's something that can show passion. And then when you're talking about sort of your skills as well, it's absolutely fine for you to draw on real life experiences. So you don't have to talk about just work. Like Ube mentioned, it doesn't have to be law related either. It could just be any life experience. So if you've been involved in a club, or if you've been involved in a sports, or I don't know, a group task at school, it could be anything. Those are all relevant. Do think about that and draw from your own sort of life experiences. For example, if you organise a friend's birthday trip, you could talk about how you coordinated that with everyone, how you managed a last minute change, how did you make it work, show that you use problem solving skills, how you're able to plan under pressure. Those sorts of skills are super important and do demonstrate that you would sort of align quite well in a career in law or outside of law as well. Other examples, volunteering, extracurricular activities, you can draw sort of just from any experience and just link back. So we're not expecting sort of the perfect sort of experience. It can really be anything. And then you can sort of look at these sort of key skills and do link them as well. So think about resilience, collaboration, open to learning, problem solving, and make sure that you're linking back to your experiences in your application and in interviews as well. And then reflect on what makes you a great fit. So be honest, be reflective, in terms of why you think you'd be good. Make sure that you are sort of putting your best foot forward and you're showing why you think you would be a good fit.
And I would just double down on the research point, because I completely agree with Tash, and Tash will know this so much better than I would anyway. But I do think that research can make or break an application. But then that begs the question of, how do you actually do good research? So I think as a starting point, I would always encourage you to look at the firm's website. I think that's a gold mine of information. So most firms will have a news section on their website. And so that's where they list all of their current deals, their current transactions they're supporting with or disputes. And so if you know that you have an interest in ESG disputes, you can then filter the news section by that topic, and then you can find specific cases that you know are really tailored to your interests and your passion. And then most firms will also talk about their community impact activities. So for example, how they're supporting the environment, or what charity work are they doing. And importantly, what I would say is, you should always try and personalize the research to yourself. I know that when I was doing my apprenticeship applications, this is something that I could have done better. So for example, with Freshfields, I was learning all sorts of facts. So I learned that the firm's first client was the Bank of England, and that was in 1743, which is great that I know about that. But when am I actually going to apply the fact that the firm's first client dated back to 1743 back to me? I just wouldn't be able to do it. And so instead, whenever you try and come across a research point, always link it back to yourself. So for example, when my screen's just completely gone. Can you still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, my laptop just said it was going to restart, so slight heart attack there, but all good now. So going back to personalizing the research to yourself. One example of what I did was I said I was really passionate about AI, and I spoke about the Freshfields lab in Berlin. And I then linked that to a personal experience where I sort of created an AI chatbot. And again, that really made me stand out because it links to a personal passion that I've got, and I linked it to a real experience. So if you can always link it back to you as a person and your personality, it paints a really compelling narrative. So I'd always encourage you to do that.
Absolutely agree. I think that's fantastic advice. There's someone that has been like mainly in the recruitment team, especially last sort of like year, and I did a lot of application sort of like sieving, and that definitely does stand out. It will make you stand out amongst loads of other people that you've really done your research and that you've really sort of connected yourself to the research. I think it is really important. So yeah, obviously it's good. Some of the more generic information is great to sort of demonstrate that you are aware of that. But yeah, just doing a bit of a deeper dive and looking into what specifically you found interesting and why that relates to you is so important and will definitely make you stand out. So definitely great advice, something to sort of keep in mind. Great. So I'll hand over to Abe. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Tash. So this next session is all about thinking like a lawyer. So that's hopefully what you're going to be doing over the next few minutes. Everything that Tash has spoken about quite expertly. So the curiosity, the analytical thinking, the judgment that a lawyer needs, we're going to try and put that in practice through a real problem. So the situation on the screen right now is we have a really big fashion brand that is essentially blowing up. So if you think about a label on social media and now everyone is wearing their clothes and their products, our client and that company, they now want to go one step further and they want to go global. So we can split their main plan into 3 components. So the first one is they want to sell their clothes in lots of different countries. The second component is they want to actually team up with influencers in order to spread the word about who they are and what their products are. The third component is they want to create a completely new logo for this big worldwide relaunch that they're doing. So, of course, on paper, that sounds incredibly exciting, but then they find a few problems that do burst their bubble. So the first one is another company has got in touch saying, we already own that logo. Very problematic. The second problem is it turns out that every single client or every single company that they want to move into has got its own sorts of regulations and its own laws. The third issue is a really big shipment of their clothes has gotten stuck and it's been delayed. And as a result of that, their sales have started to tank. So in this situation, your job is going to be their lawyer. So you're the person who the company has called for help and for advice. So there's 3 questions on the side that we're going to go through in turn. So the first one is, what are the biggest risks here? What would you sort out first? And how would you actually help move the client forward? So how do we actually get them out of this big wormhole that they're in? So let's start off with the first question, which is, what are the biggest risks here? So please do use the Q&A feature. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Verifying the claim that the logo is already registered. Perfect. Yep, really important. Does everyone else agree with that? What else do you guys think? Yeah, at its core, I think we smashed it right from the outset. The right answer is probably to do with trademarks. So that's essentially what you've said. So a trademark is the legal version of saying dibs for something. So when a company registers a trademark on its logo or on its name, it's essentially saying this is ours and no one else is allowed to use it to sell similar products or items in the future. So for example, if we put that in practice, it's how the whole world knows the Nike tick means Nike and nothing else. Importantly, and I always think this is really interesting, you can trademark a lot more than just logos. So if you think about that little ta-dum sound when you're listening to Netflix, that's been trademarked. Even something like a color that can be trademarked. So Cadbury have a specific shade of purple that they've trademarked. They fought in court for many, many years, and now they've trademarked that specific shade of purple, which is really cool. So if we think back to our company now, another business is essentially claiming that they already own this logo. If that is true, then our client would be doing what we call infringement. So that's just a really fancy word of using something that's already been claimed by someone else without their permission. And the consequences of us doing that would be absolutely huge. So, for example, our client could be taken to court, they could be sued, they could be ordered to remove the logo of every single thing that they own. They would therefore be forced to rebrand from scratch. And despite the fact that they've spent a fortune plastering it everywhere, they would have to do that. They would have no choice. So because this whole entire global relaunch is being built around this logo, that's the risk that I would say would bring this whole situation and this whole plan crashing down. So that's the really important one. Of course, the other two issues would need to be addressed, but this is the one that I would say is going to do the most damage. So really good work there. On to the second question. What, and it also links to the first one, but what would you sort out first here? So what steps would you actually take? So we've identified that the biggest issue is that of the logo. So how are we actually going to navigate this process? We know that we've got lots of other issues going on. We know this is the most important one. So what steps would you take? And what would your thought process be in general here? Okay, I'll get us started. The way I would think about it is, of course, there's quite a lot going on here. Yes, we've extracted that this is the most pressing issue, but we now need to go through it systematically. And in cases like this, I like to think a lawyer is a bit like a doctor in A&E. So when you have lots of patients come, is not going to treat them in the exact order that they arrived. They're not going to do that because that's not the sensible thing to do. Instead, they're going to deal with the most serious one first. So the one that does the most damage, if you ignore it, would need to be identified first. That's what we call triaging. So we'd want to identify which of our problems does the most damage if we leave it. And as we've already established, that is the logo, because every other country that they launch in and every extra pound, that's going to be undone later if we need to actually completely change our branding because we haven't trademarked it. So the very first thing that I would want to do is to do some detective work and some research on the trademark. For all we know, this other company's claim might not actually be legitimate. It might be legitimate, but it might only cover specific countries. So I would want to know which countries does it cover? Does it even apply to clothes specifically? And once I've developed all of that understanding and I've got all my facts checked, I would then want to work out the options. So the whole point is to figure all of this out before the big launch. That's because we still have time to change course instead of after. If you realize after the launch that actually you can't have that branding or that logo, you're then going to have to start from square one, and that's not cost effective and it's not time effective. Now, thinking about the third question, which I think is the heart of this whole thing, how would you actually help move this client forward? So what advice would you want to give them? Because ultimately, as Tash was saying, that's the most important thing that a lawyer can do. Of course, we might have all of the facts, but the client, they just want advice. They want to know how they can get out of this situation or how they can make the best possible outcome of what is a really tricky predicament to find themselves in. So what kind of advice could we actually give them that allows them to move forward? Loving this, guys. These are really good points. So yeah, negotiate with the other company over trademark rights. We might be able to say to them, actually, okay, this is the situation we find ourselves in. How about we pay you a fixed sum of money and we therefore share these rights? That is probably a lot more cost effective than if you were to actually do research and development again over a new brand, and to actually then implement that on your products, discard previous inventory that you've got. That would just be too much money. So instead, if we could pay the other company that has trademarked the rights a small lump sum every year, that's probably a much smarter option. Probably advise them to sort out the issues with the logo before attempting to expand in other countries. Yeah, really good idea. Because if they haven't sorted that out first and they're already expanding, then chances are they're probably going to have to do a lot more work again, and that results in duplication. Stay calm and be open-minded to compromising when talking with the other company. Really good point. A client, I think the worst thing that you can do is start panicking and start telling the client that you're really anxious about anything, because the client's already really stressed. They've come to you as an expert. So they always want you to be level-minded. They want you to be calm. They want you to be someone that is able to absorb all of these issues and give them a strong plan going forward, which is what you guys have done. As a first starting point, we could consider negotiating these rights with the other company. I feel like a lot of the time there's a big myth with lawyers that the best lawyer is someone that says, no, you can't do that, and leaves it at that. But the truth is always the opposite. The best lawyer is someone who says, yes, we can do that, and here's how. Because spotting the problem is only one part of the whole process. So for this client, I would say, these are all of the choices, and here's my recommendation because of this reason. So on the logo, that would mean giving them all of the possible realistic options, roughly what each one costs, how long it might take, because if it's going to take a few years, chances are they're not going to be as inclined to go with that alternative or that method, because time is money at the end of the day. And I would then try and say what I would do in their shoes and why that is. So like you said, maybe we could strike a deal with another company to share or to even buy the rights. Maybe we could tweak the logo ever so slightly so that it's not actually causing an infringement of any kind. And as an out-of-the-box idea, what I might say is, how about we launch first in the countries where everything's already cleared, so where this wouldn't be an issue and where this isn't an infringement, so that you can keep the momentum that you've got in social media right now. And that way we can still sort out the tricky ones and you're still able to maximize profit and maximize your brand image. If we then just go through the other issues, on the influencers, I would give them a really simple set of rules. So for example, I would say their adverts need to stay legal in every single country. On the delayed shipment, I would say we need to look at the contract. So for example, what our client might be owned for this delay that's happened, and I would help them to keep their shops and their customers happy while everything else gets sorted. So that was the exercise, done and dusted. But I wanted to finish this session by giving you a tool that you can leave this session with. And that tool is a framework that I call the PESTLE framework. This is not actually my framework, so I have not trademarked it, but I think it's really important, and it's a really good, just general way of thinking. So you can think of PESTLE as a checklist of 6 different angles to look at any situation from. So whenever someone asks for your opinion on something, your mind will never go blank, because that blank moment is everyone's worst nightmare. And for me, PESTLE is the cure for that. So if we go through the 6 letters of PESTLE using the same fashion company, I'm hoping that will illustrate the point. So P in PESTLE stands for political. So that's everything to do with governments and how different countries get along and their relationships. So for example, when 2 countries fall out, they might sometimes slap a tariff on each other's goods. So a tariff is just a tax on stuff coming in from abroad. So that means that a jumper that, I don't know, could cost our country £20 to bring into a country, could suddenly cost £30 overnight, purely because 2 governments are having an argument or dispute of some sort. So policy and politics are really important, and it's definitely a factor that you'll always want to consider. E is for ethical. That's just about doing the right thing. So how the public would react if they found out something about your company that isn't going to paint you in a positive image. For a fashion brand, the big question is where and how these clothes are actually being made, and whether the factory workers are being treated in a fair and accessible manner. So recently you might have heard about fast fashion. They've had some really big scandals about dangerous factories, and it can completely influence how shoppers, especially our generation, actually judge a brand. The court of public opinion only gets stronger and stronger every day. So if you get that wrong, no amount of marketing is going to save you. S is then for social, and that's all about people and trends. So what's really cool in one country can mean something completely different in another country. So for example, even something as small as colors can have different meanings. In some countries, white can be a wedding color, but in some countries or areas of the world, white might be something that you wear to a funeral. So a brand going global has to do research into all of the different countries that they're trying to enter into, because the worst thing they could do is cause offense to their consumer or their customer in that area completely by accident. T is then for technological. So that's all about the tech behind business. So our company is online, on apps and social media, and that also brings a really big danger because you have to think about fakes. So the market for counterfeit goods, meaning essentially fake copies or real products of real products, that's worth around 400 billion a year, which is astonishing. And so fakes can spread across the internet in a matter of hours. So you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence, that you're protecting your brand, and that there's no fakes online. L, of course, is for legal. We can't forget that. And that's all about the actual law. So the trademark on the logo, the different rules on advertising and shopping in each country, and what the actual contract is. So for example, in this case, the contract behind the delayed shipment. Is our client going to get some form of reimbursement for this? So everything that we've talked, sorry, I'm just going to get some water.
Obey, just you get some water, and I will talk about how hot it is today. Is it just roasting? I am sorry. Is anybody hot? If anybody's hot, please can I have a react emoji? Can I have, please? Can I have the rocket emoji? If you can find that one, I think that comes with an effect. It's too hot for me today.
All good.
Obey, have you recovered? Are you still alive?
I've recovered. I just gave you a whole monologue, but I'm hoping this is helpful. So
it is helpful. It is helpful, although we like to see that you're human, as well as being a brilliant solicitor apprentice. So thank you for that.
So going back to L, which is legal, everything we spoke about, that is essentially encompassed in that legal umbrella. So the final letter is E for economical. So that's all about money and the wider economy. So money is worth different amounts in different countries, and that value changes every single second of the day. So an example could be our company could agree a really big deal one morning, and by the afternoon they could be earning thousands less on it just because the currency has shifted whilst they were having lunch. So whenever I read a news article or wherever I am given new information about something, I always try and run pestle through in my mind, because it just means that you're looking through a different angle and you're looking through all the different perspectives, and you're able to piece all of these connections together. So I remember when I was in my apprenticeship interviews and I had a case study that was completely foreign and new to me. But as a starting point, if you just start thinking about pestle, you're always going to have somewhere to start, and you always have something reason to say. And just on that, and I know one of the previous questions was, how can you actually apply problem solving to a real world context? What I would say is, and this is going back to LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn already, brilliant. But if you're not, the first thing that I would do after this session is to set up a profile, because at your stage, it's really important for meeting new people and opportunities. Once you're on LinkedIn, I would search for something called Fresh Perspectives. This is a really cheeky plug, but essentially that is our own Freshfields newsletter, and it gets released every Friday with updates sent across a wide range of issues. So what challenges our clients are currently facing, what wider issues are happening in the industry. And as you read through that article every week, if you start quietly going through pestle in your mind without noticing it, you're going to develop something that we call commercial awareness. And that just that's just your understanding of how businesses operate and how they make money. And that's really important, because at the end of the day, I always like to think as a lawyer as a bit of a weather forecaster for businesses, because your main goal is to try and spot the storm coming before it hits, so that your client has protection and that your client is able to get to an umbrella in time. So much of what we do is we're spotting the problems of our clients tomorrow, today, and we're working towards solving them today. So if you keep this up, if you keep using the pestle framework, if you keep reading the articles from Fresh Perspectives, you'll be well on your way to doing exactly that.
That is some great advice, Obe. Thank you so much. Hopefully that is something that everyone could take away with them today. This is the final slide from us before we all sort of open the floor to some questions. But yeah, sort of like what was mentioned, you don't need to have it all figured out. That's completely fine. You know, you're doing amazing just being here right now, engaging sort of in the exercise and in this series. And no one expects you to know exactly what your future will look like. You don't have to have a detailed plan. But what matters is just staying curious and being open to opportunities and taking small intentional steps that help you build confidence and explore what interests you. Every experience you have, whether that's in school, activities, or simply something new, helps you develop your skills and move forward. So rather than asking you to do lots of things, we're going to keep it simple. So yeah, in terms of like, just tell us what you've chosen in the chat. What are your sort of like thoughts, anything you've taken away with, and also sort of any questions as well.
So much, Ash and Ube. Finn and I are going to come back on line now. It would be great if we could get some questions in the Q&A. You'll see that at the bottom. I know that you usually ask lots and lots of questions, so please do. What a super session, and thank you so much for not only building confidence, but then also equipping people to become confident because they gain more skills. That was a clear theme that was running through today. You will do no worse than applying to, no better than applying to Freshfields. I will say, no one is going to criticize you for that. They are an incredible law firm. Obviously, I love all of my law firms, but they are incredible. I do just want to come back a little bit on Pestle, which Ube introduced you to. If any of you post-grad get to do an MBA, Pestle would be one of the frameworks that you use. So you've been given some post-grad education here, possibly at the age of 14, 15. So I hope that has landed well. And I think the other thing to say, what we notice sometimes with our younger lawyers who are getting this really great education from our law schools, including things like Pestle, is if you use that with your partners, sometimes who haven't had that particular piece of education, you can almost educate upwards. So that can be really, really helpful in terms of creating a strong reputation and creating a connection with your partners, and also just generally in bringing up the level of performance of a law firm, even one as great as Freshfields. So Ube, a special thanks to you for bringing that in. Can I, Finley, would you mind adding your thoughts, and also if you have any Q&A that we should be doing, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Massive thank you, Ube and Natasha, for a brilliant session. I think it's been a really good way to conclude what's been a great series. You know, you've really brought together all the points from all of the firms and giving people some real sort of vision and scope going forwards as to what they need to be doing for their next steps. We've just had a question come in, and please do continue to put your questions in our last few minutes of the session. Ube, if you could go back to when you were applying for solicitor apprenticeships and give yourself one piece of advice, what would you give to your younger self?
It's a really good question, because there is so much that I would do differently, but I would say the most important thing is have confidence in yourself. I genuinely did not think I was going to get any solicitor apprenticeship. I've always been quite academic, so I thought with university, I think I have a pretty strong chance at this because this is where I'm meant to be. I've just always liked books. Whereas with apprenticeships, they demand so much more. And so I felt so much imposter syndrome that I applied to so many firms, not because one, I had a genuine passion for that firm, but two, because I felt like I just had to apply to so many in order to get one. And it is right that you shouldn't only apply to one firm, but you should try and apply to I would say between 5 to 10 firms, because those are firms which, one, you are genuinely really passionate about, and two, it means that you are giving yourself enough time to actually get to know that firm. Firms can very easily tell when you've just applied to them for the sake of it. I applied for a few firms that specialized in medical negligence or criminal litigation. That's not what I'm interested in. I only applied for it because I wanted to maximize my chances of getting an apprenticeship. That's not the best thing to do. You'll be serving yourself in a much better way if you only applied, like I said, to 5 to 10 firms, but really ensure that you're passionate about it, because your passion will be infectious. If you genuinely have a passion or an excitement for the work that they do, I promise you it will come across in an interview. It will come across in your written application. So you shouldn't have to fake it in any way. And ultimately, just trust yourself. All of you, like I said, being here at the stage you are right now is so incredibly impressive. You're all doing all the right things. So have confidence in your judgment and in your abilities, and know that you'll just end up exactly where you're meant to be, no matter what happens.
Thanks for that, Ube. And I think your passion clearly does come across there in the answer you've just given, which is obviously amazing for us to see. And exactly what we need people to see going forwards and have that confidence in themselves. Question for yourself, Natasha. What makes an application stand out to you when it comes across your desk?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't stress enough. I know how cheesy it sounds, but being yourself and being authentic, I think that really does come across in applications, like that you sort of brought yourself to the table. You talked about sort of what you're interested in, anything that you do in terms of like sports, activities, societies. Those are all things that do come across really well. I think a lot of people do tend to sort of think about sort of the company and what they think that we want to hear, but we want to hear about you, yourself, and how you think you align best with the firm. Just making sure that you are being authentically yourself, that you're, sort of showing what you're like and why you think you'd be a good fit would be fantastic. I definitely think that makes you stand out amongst loads of other people. So try to sort of step out and not think just what we want to hear, but bring yourself into your application. I think that really does make you stand out.
And just on that, what I would say is, so many people try and differentiate themselves from the other candidates, and that's what you should want to do. You should try and show your unique selling points, what makes you different. But the answer as to how you do that is so much simpler. As Tash said, it's just by being you. No one else has your lived experiences. No one else has your background, your experiences. So use all of that to your advantage. For example, I didn't think that I was going to do law for most of my life. I thought that I was going to do medicine. So a lot of my work experience, my volunteering, that was all medicine based. But despite that, in all of my applications, I mentioned my volunteering work at hospitals, because it's all about transferable skills. And if anything, I think it might have, Tash will know this better, I think it might have made me a more interesting candidate, because an interviewer who hears about how you can link your communication skills to communicating with someone that was nonverbal, that's going to sound like a much more interesting answer than something which you've described through a more corporate or office work experience, which is obviously really important. But at the same time, it just makes you sound a bit more exciting and a bit more, a bit less forgettable at the end of the day.
Absolutely agree. Definitely. I do think it's great to have legal experience. That's fantastic. Do seek that. But if you have other experience, you don't have legal experience, that's just as good and really does make you stand out as well. So do leverage all of your experiences.
Thank you both for those contributions. And with that is all of the questions in our Q&A tonight. So that comes to the end of the session and the end of the in2 series. So thank you very much both for your time this evening. Thank you everyone for your continued commitment and contributions to the series. I have just put in the chat again a sign-up link to our Ask CC form. As I've said, we're going to use exactly the same link that you've been using for the in2 series. So if you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. But that does give you the opportunity to ask us some questions in advance that we can then pass on to our panelists if you use the sign-up form. So either or is okay. But if that's something you're interested in, that'll be taking place next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Otherwise, anything for you to add, Patrick?
I just would like everyone to go back into the emojis and do the rocket thing, because I think you really rocketed your way through this program. So please, can you go on those? Let's have the rockets. Or it looks like confetti cannons. Maybe you don't have rockets as an option, but thank you. Be really proud of yourselves. Please do tell your careers advisors, your teachers, your families. You have been noticed by 10 of the best law firms in the country. I'm not sure I can promise you that you're all going to get a job at Freshfields, but I can promise you that they'll read your application when it comes in. And just know that, you know, we are very, very proud of you. And yeah, I'm feeling a bit emotional, so I'm going to say goodbye to you all. Tash, Ubay, if you could stay on, that would be amazing. Thank you so much.